Police redirected traffic onto the old highway about 10 kilometres north of Raymond Terrace, while emergency workers cleared debris. Melbourne driver Gino Kakulian was transporting a load of 120 tyres and 5 pallets of beer from Brisbane to Sydney when he smelt trouble.
I was coming down the hill, smoke and fire started coming from where the gear stick is, and as it was coming up, I was trying to stop the truck and put it out at the same time. The fire was on top of the motor, and I was just had a towel and I was pushing it down towards the motor to try and put it out, but it didn't do any good.
Firefighting units arrived 15 minutes later.
The truck was completely alight from one end to the other.
So how high were the flames?
Flames weren't too high, probably 10 or 12 metres, but of course with the tyres it was just a thick column of black smoke going well into the air.
Madawi Bushfire Brigade, together with Raymond Terrace Fire Brigade and waterboard tankers, battled for nearly 2 hours to extinguish the blaze, dousing the flames with a foam compound mixed with water. The 25-year-old truck driver received superficial burns to the arms while he was trying to stop the fire. The semi-trailer and contents were insured. Peter Ryan reporting for NBN News.
Exciting and ambitious is probably the best way to sum up what the Williamtown base has planned for Fighter World Incorporated. Today, at the base, the details of the proposed layout were unveiled by the display design team, SPAN of Sydney. At this stage, the museum will be housed in a 2-storey building, which will replace the present base museum at the front entrance. Its close proximity to the runway will allow the viewing of actual craft taking off and landing. But it's the view inside the building that is causing all the excitement. With the use of larger-than-life high-tech displays, actual RAAF aircraft and equipment, and informed personnel, the museum will expose a side of Air Force life never before seen in such detail. The whole concept will of course dwell on excitement, but as Jan Vandenberg, managing director of SPAN, who also handled the design of many of Expo's more spectacular pavilions, admits, authenticity is also a vital factor to ensure the RAAF maintains its credibility.
Well, we're here today to find out how realistic our concept is and to get a good feedback on what else is required to add to our designs to make it more realistic. We're also looking at the engineering possibilities, challenges that it will offer to make sure it all works.
Expected to cost the RAF $2.5 million, the project has been designed to be a marketable package to ease some of those extra costs, with sponsors to be secured to help complete the most expensive displays. And certainly the most expensive of all will be the one Jan Vandenberg also believes will keep the people coming back time and time again, and that's the theaterette.
The most exciting aspect of it will be the simulator, which will be a theaterette for 30 visitors, 28 plus 2 wheelchairs. It will be a trip as realistic as possible in a cockpit of a Hornet. Not many of us have got the privilege to fly in a Hornet, so this really is an opportunity for everybody to come and feel the excitement right down to the paper bag in the seat in front of you.
For as long as he can remember, Chris Colosser has wanted a computer. He's thought about it time and time again as he lay in hospital beds preparing for or recovering from the many operations he's had to undergo. Today, Chris's dream came true with the arrival of a brand new top-of-the-range Apple computer, complete with all the hardware and software any young boy could want. It was the type of surprise Joseph Colosser, a corporal at the Williamtown RAAF base, has always wanted for his son, but knew for the time being at least he couldn't afford. Instead, it came courtesy of Starflight, the American-based organisation who's in the business of making 6 children's dreams come true. Just 3 weeks ago, when Chris was recovering from his 3rd operation, Starflight asked Chris what he wanted most in the world, and for him, the answer was simple.
Now, what sort of surprises did they offer you? trip to Disneyland, making a dream come true, stuff like that.
What made you select a computer?
I've wanted one for nearly 5 years, and it was the only thing I wanted at the time.
Today's big handover put a smile not only on the face of Chris but also his whole family. There have been plenty of bad times for Joe and wife Shirley. Chris was born with 10 defects in his heart. He underwent open heart surgery for the first time when he was just 9 months old. But both admitted all those traumas just seemed to melt away when they realised just how much today meant to their son.
He's pulled the ground 20 metres short of the halfway mark, Knights into the paddock. Tony Townsend from the dummy half position decides that he'll go looking for some free yardage.
I can't answer that one. I don't really know whether we really knew about it at the time when the tenders were called.
They didn't have the guts to compete internationally, or they weren't prepared to do it in time.
Few people would have guessed today that Bob Hawke was up till the wee small hours this morning drumming up support among the party faithful in Maitland and Cessnock. He arrived fresh and ready to confront a school assembly at Singleton High School. There he dwelled long and loud on the importance the federal government had placed on education and on students staying on at school.
I believe that the best thing that can happen for you and for your country that you love so much is that you stay on in the education system as long as you possibly can.
After that, the PM made a quick whip around the school, chatting with students and teachers, ever smiling and ever relaxed. So relaxed, in fact, that Year 9 student Nicola Partridge admitted her meeting was a bit of an anticlimax.
I was expecting this man, he was, like a queen or something. He was going to be really high up, but no, he's just down to earth like any other normal person.
Next stop for Mr Hawke was Denman Public School, where there was more chatting with the children, a book signing and a tree planting. And then the moment 94-year-old Lucy Medhurst had waited all her life for, a meeting with the Prime Minister. As he left the school, Mr Hawke agreed to a brief news conference, and once again the question was raised about that all-elusive federal election date.
Don't let's play games. I've been saying all the way along consistently that the period for an election will be roughly from the end of this year to the middle of 1990. I've been saying that consistently. I'm saying I'm not in an election mode. I'm not
I don't see that we're preparing for an election in 1989. It's possible at the end of the year, more likely in the next year.
That out of the way, the Prime Minister settled down to enjoying himself, and what better place to do that than a new-look Arrowfield thoroughbred stud at Jerry's Plains. The first to admit he's a keen racing man, Mr Hawke was clearly on top of the world when he was taken on a tour of the complex, which has just had $14 million spent on it. The crowd on hand to see Mr Hawke officially open the new Arrowfield was like a who's who of the racing world. From Robert Sangster
Isn't that a fabulous place?
to Mike Willisey,
Well, I think it's terrific because...
to Tommy Smith.
Well, I'm amazed. Never thought I'd see anything like this in Australia.
Mr Hawke was treated to a special viewing of the stud's 5 stallions worth in excess of $14 million, the star of which was the great galloper Rancher. But while the Prime Minister did manage to escape being bogged down with all his duties today, his plane wasn't quite so lucky. As it taxied to prepare for his departure, it became bogged axle deep. That sparked a major rescue operation, which lasted more than 2 hours. Eventually, the Prime Minister, still smiling, left on a private plane. Children and animals. Most people won't work with them except politicians come election time. So with Mr Hawke having a double dose of both while in the Hunter today, it's easy to see why the sceptics are questioning his claims that there'll be no early election. Tracy Reid, NBN News.
"68 cars were judged, from a 1917 Studebaker hearse to the sleek, stylised machines of the 1960s. The Studebaker company began in 1852, building horse-drawn carts. In 1913 it developed its first gasoline engine, and the company built cars up until 1966, a time they call the golden age of motoring. You can pick up a bargain for around $2,000, but fanatics will pay dearly for restored Studebakers. Bill Oliver came from California for the meeting. His 1954 Starlight is valued at $40,000. Bill says Studebaker owners are special people.
They're dedicated to a classic thing, and all the old cars are that way, though, and the old car people, the Fords, the Chevrolets, Buicks, Dodges, all of them. They're preserving a little bit of history, I think.
It's hardly great weather for camping, but Tent City is alive and well at Cessnock Showground. It's the 11th year the Uniting Church has arranged the youth meeting, with a series of talks, study groups and meditation. For these young people, unlike many, Easter is not a break, it's a time to reflect on Christianity. But that's not to say they aren't having a good time along the way.
Well, we originally started a tournament in 1980, which was basically for the local kids, and we decided 5 years ago to upgrade that and invite the two boys and 2 girls from each state and supplement the field with the best quality sub-juniors we have in this state. So it's now become a very significant event, you know, in the junior golf program in Australia.
Well, it's been going for 5 years now. What's happened to some of those young players?
Well, it's been pretty exciting to sit back and watch the results. Stuart Bouvrier is one that comes immediately to mind. He won here, I think, 2 years ago, and he went on to win the Australian Junior, and then this year just gone, he won the Australian Amateur. So that was pretty exciting. And then from the ladies' point of view, Nicole Leween has now turned professional and has done very well for herself. And a number of other kids have gone on to represent Australia. So I see it as a very important part of the future of the game of golf in this country. The younger kids, junior golf in this country is under 21. This particular tournament's all about kids under 18, which I think is the right age to start developing their future. I think the 18 to 21-year-old kids are a bit old.
Well, why does the tournament attract so much talent?
Well, it's got a reputation now right around Australia, and the kids come here and really enjoy themselves. We have a disco one night, which is a little bit out of the norm, if you like, and basically we want the kids to enjoy themselves as well as try and perform at their best. But the interesting thing really for the younger kids is the 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-olds. They get a chance to compare themselves with the best kids from around Australia at the same age. As I said, junior golf being under 21, the younger kids tend to get neglected the way the junior golf structure is set up. So fortunately through the Junior Golf Foundation, which we have set up here now and is running very successfully, it's a good chance for us to look at the best young talent in Australia.
Members of the 5,000-strong Greek community remembered the day when their ancestors won their freedom. A service at the St Demetrius Church was a real family affair, with young members of the church school dressing in national costume. Wreaths were laid at the cenotaph by the Lord Mayor of Newcastle, John McNaughton, Industrial Relations Minister Peter Morris, a church member since its inception, and Greek community leaders. Later the children recited poetry, sang and performed national dances at an evening celebration. Today the little ones not only remembered their heritage, but also pledged allegiance to their new homeland.
Winfield Cup Rugby League is not a game for the soft at heart. Prop forward Mark Sargent is testimony to that, with lacerations to the left eye and swelling. The big night is still a little blurred by last weekend's game against Balmain. The Knights have accused hot-headed Tiger half Gary Freeman of foul play.
Our allegations will be that his hand and fingers came into contact with Mark's left eye, caused the damage to it. That will be supported in our submissions by videos of the incident and by evidence of other players.
Knights officials pored over replays of the incident behind closed doors today. Also tonight, front row partner Peter Johnston faces charges of attacking the head of an opponent, a charge Max Fox says Johnston denies. Newcastle officials say they will not accept illegal play from any of their players, especially eye gouging.
The situation would be if we believe we had a player who was guilty of gouging the eye in particular, I tend to think we'd try and rip his contract up.
Balmain halfback Gary Freeman was suspended for 12 games, and here are some of the incidents in which he was involved. At the judiciary meeting on Tuesday night, Freeman declared his innocence. Today he's saying the Knights baited the Balmain players.
The way Newcastle sort of provoked a lot of attacks and all that, but that's part and parcel of the game, and I think the referee sort of summed it up by sending three of their players off. The game was marred by different little incidents.
Knights coach Alan McMahon admits it was a tough match. However, he says reports that Balmain coach Warren Ryan disapproved of the style of Newcastle's play has taken the bad feeling beyond the football field.
Well, I think we've probably been better friends over the years. To him, he's very, very upset now because, as it appeared, he's lost a player for 12 weeks and ours was exonerated.
The Knights have injury problems themselves, with lock Mark Glanville and centre Jeff Doyle out of action with broken thumbs. but their replacements will fill the gaps adequately, with hard-tackling Mike McKinnon coming in for Glanville and Glenn Miller returning to the centres to partner Robbie McCormack. With the grandstands sold out, and if the weather breaks, there's bound to be a huge crowd at the ISC on Sunday. It's a clash of the birds at the Newcastle Basketball Stadium tomorrow night in the Still City Challenge. The Newcastle NIB Falcons and the Illawarra Hawks meet in the annual battle, and it will be the first real test for coach Ken Cole's kids. Illawarra have been in great form in the pre-season, but will be hard to beat, while the Falcons had an excellent win over the New Zealand national team to signal they'll be hard to toss also. Newcastle Australs play their first home game of the season when they clash with the Vala at Austral Park on Sunday. Australs have only 1 point on the board after 2 away games and will be looking to reproduce their pre-season form to gain maximum points. And the promotions manager of the Newcastle Motordrome, Peter Gerbrel, has announced the abandonment of the scheduled race meeting set down for tomorrow night and the early closure of the nighttime racing season. Enough is enough, said Gerbrel, who had the worst season on record for the past 14 years, with 23 rain-affected meetings, 8 of them total washouts.
Wirrabulong Reserve between Batteau Bay and Foresters Beach was described by Premier Nick Greiner as one of the most spectacular coastal areas in New South Wales in a personally signed news release which promised the area would become a magnificent national park. The narrow strip contains spectacular views and also one of only 2 non-estuarine mangroves in the state. But since that pre-election promise, also confirmed by Environment Minister Tim Moore, an adjoining farm was rezoned for development and the area is being proposed as a state recreation area. Today, Secretary of the Wirrabulong Committee, John Asquith, said it would appear that having raised no objections to the rezoning, the National Park Service is now intending to downgrade the park. Liberal member for Gosford, Chris Harcher, who used the promise as an election stance, says he will be talking to Tim Moore next week about the area, which he would prefer to see created as a national park. Then it could be conserved more effectively, he says.
Classical fanfare and a traditional stampede for bargains has signalled the official opening of $89 million extensions to Charlestown Square.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.